It's Monday, April 28th. Welcome to today's episode, the podcast where we discuss the most recent installments of a different series every show. Étoile is a new Prime series which takes the ballet industry and sticks it center stage. All 8 episodes were released April 24th. Episode 1, The Swap, is self-explanatory. It begins October 2024. The ballet industry is foundering. COVID, expenses, alternative entertainment, even cultural art hubs like New York and Paris. The audience is just dying. Something has got to change. Enter Geneviève and her French posse traveling to Lincoln Center to make a proposal to Jack McMillan, the executive director of the New York Metropolitan Ballet, right?
Yep.
Genevieve's company has found a benefactor who is willing to fund a potential gangbuster idea to stir up some positive buzz for the ballet. The idea is to swap the most talented stars from one side of the world with the other for 1 year, promote it, re-enhance or restore and enhance the current venues. The mantra basically being, if you build it, they will come, the audience will come back. The catch is that the benefactor, Crispin, is a morally reprehensible dude. He's a business geezer. He's referred to as the devil, as a soil rapist. His riches were made off the backs of the poor, everything from chemical warfare, weapons, anti-environment enterprises, sleazy tax schemes, and it's not a secret. So
Is he kind of like Brian Cox from Succession?
no, because he's flamboyant about it. He doesn't care. He's just like, I love the ballet. So he's kind of like in Has Been Hotel. The first episode, Charlie Morningstar is trying to get her hotel up and working in hell, and like the worst dude possible shows up at her doorstep. The radio demon, Alistar, and he says, I want to help you guys out. And at first, she's a little hesitant, but then she's like, yeah, the more the merrier. And in the same reality, Jack is testing his own moral compass, and even though at one point he had kicked this benefactor out of his ballet, he's basically allowing Crispin in and saying, we're going to go ahead with this swap. And he doesn't make it easy for Geneviève because he asks Geneviève for the best ballerina of the bunch, Cheyenne Toussaint. And Geneviève isn't thrilled about it. However, she's not left empty-handed. She also gets some really nice pieces from the U.S., including one choreographer who seems like he's an up-and-coming genius, right? Eccentric genius, but still a genius. Cheyenne's storyline takes up the second half of the episode. Cheyenne Toussaint, she hates everything and everybody, but her talent and fame are unquestioned. Furious at being sent back to America, the latter part of the episode is showing her go from boat to jail cell, from room to room, just snarling at whoever gets in her way.
And you don't see her like for the first half at all, right? I know you said that she takes up the second half, but like you are just introduced to her, maybe 35 minutes in?
Not uncommon for this type of show. Usually they spent a lot of time kind of like Luke Kirby is the main star of the show.
Yeah.
So Jack was the main presence of the first half. The characters are funny, peculiar, witty, eccentric. The dancing is real. The problem that they're facing feels real because everybody who's been to New York and seen like Broadway, they definitely have tried to develop and change with what happened with COVID, they just, and so I would compare this to The Studio. That's also a prescient show about them trying to save the industry, coming from a place of love, but not pretending that problems don't really exist, juggling all the demands of money and talent and crunch time, but adding humor to it. And so I've got a ton of pros for this thing, a few cons. Overall, I'm going to give it a pretty positive review. Anything for me?
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit before you get into that about Amy Sherman Palladino. Do you know who she is?
Creator, right?
Yeah, she's the creator of this series, but she also was a ballet dancer. I think that she started ballet dancing when she was 4, and then she had to choose between a callback to being a dancer in Cats musical or to write for Roseanne. I think this was back in either the early 2000s, maybe the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
She ended up choosing Roseanne. Because of that, she was able to create Gilmore Girls, which ran from 2000 to 2007, had a falling out with the CW. 2008, she creates a sitcom called The Return of Jezebel James, starring Parker Posey. That ran for like 3 episodes. They didn't even try to air like the remaining 4. Made Bunheads, which was kind of similar because that's centered on a showgirl who gets married and is taught alongside her mother-in-law at ballet school, but that didn't get renewed. And then she worked on the Gilmore Girls revival in 2016. But
that was already 8 years ago. That's crazy. Or 9 years ago.
Yeah, I still remember like Netflix promoting that. But then June 2016, Amazon orders the pilot for The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. I don't think I really need to talk too much about it. Critical acclaim throughout the 5 seasons, won Golden Globes. She won some Emmys for it,
I
but the
just
show
liked the
did as
first
well.
season. Now, I did kind of give up just watching it, but like I remember that I thought after the first season, it sort of lost its way. The characters became like way less stuck to reality to
Throughout
me.
its run, though, I think it got like
I know I had Monk in it, and Luke Kirby was also
yes,
in it.
Luke Kirby was in it,
Right, but
right?
I didn't become a fan of Luke Kirby's until I saw Doctor Death season 2, where he had one really tremendous episode, episode 5. It was like as harrowing as what you saw in The Pit this year.
I recognized him from The Panhandle. It's funny because 3 weeks after they finished Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is when he was offered this job. But just going back to it really fast, she works with her husband Daniel Palladino, who is also working on this show as well. They were all expected to take a break, but then she really, really was sad that Bunheads was canceled, wanted to go back into the ballet world, and that is why they ended up making this show.
She reminds me a little bit of the lady that we talked about who created the Kat Dennings show most recently, because
Shifting
a
gears.
lot of female centric shows that she's been in charge of. It seems like this would be the first one. I don't know much about the Bunheads thing, where it's not the main star. Again, if you're taking Luke Kirby to be the main
Right.
guy, is a guy. Is a
Right.
dude,
Yeah.
right? Now Cheyenne is, I mean, just as important to the show,
But
but like,
but the center point, like the main character, I think, is Luke Kirby
yeah.
throughout the 8
So
episodes. Yeah.
that's interesting. Did you see as much of a connection between Miss Maisel and this project as I saw to the Seth Rogen one, the studio?
I mean, I think that it's more like the studio. I never saw Miss Maisel. I should
I
probably
mean,
say
there's
it
New York
first.
being center point. This takes place in 2024. Miss Maisel was like the 50s, 60s, or
Right.
something like that. But I do see the humor, the quick wit. That's transcended into this a little bit.
Also, there's long takes, and this is a little bit inspired by the La Dance, like a French film that came out in 2009 that was kind of similar in its storytelling, at least when it got to the dancing, where a lot of it is just focused on that. You have
I'm
long
surprised you
takes.
didn't have more explanation of like there being a French company that got involved in the creation of this, because it does feel very French.
Well, actually, they filmed both in New York and in Paris.
Yeah,
And I think
that's
they,
my first pro. Is it's ostentatious in the way that they filmed in these huge locations, not just exterior shots. They were walking in and out of practicing, having meetings in Lincoln Center. I don't think you can easily do that without forking out a huge budget. They also hired real orchestras, dancers, reserved full theaters and auditoriums. I could tell this just by watching the episode.
they had dance companies
Yeah.
in New York and in Paris, both in separate places.
And I think the companies which both directors, Jack and Geneviève, are representing are real dance companies, like the Metropolitan Dance Company or whatever that he's in charge of, or the Paris National, or I think that she does. Like both of those actually exist. So in order to get the rights to represent them, I would think is also another bit of dough. It also faked New York Times reviews. I found that funny because like how important are those even today? And Amazon also didn't like, what do we know about really expensive Amazon shows? Fallout, Lord of the Rings,
I was gonna
Citadel,
say, yeah.
CGI. That
Usually,
is
and
the
also,
main. That is the thing that causes the most expense, and the big stars that are attached to them. In this, they spent the money on the right stuff, I think.
I was
Because
going to say, yeah, because all the ones that you just mentioned, maybe aside from Fallout, they aren't like really that well reviewed.
they might
This
not be well
was-
reviewed, but they've certainly gotten more seasons. It's not like they've been canceled.
and this had a 2-season order.
This is also, as far as pros goes, a rare comedy like Search Party. I'm going to name a bunch of them now, but they are rare. Search Party, Newsroom, The Bear, The Pit, and The Studio, where it demands your attention. Like if you walk away from this, you're going to regret it. It's this 55 minutes of Étoile, the first episode, goes much quicker than the 40 minutes that I had to watch for Ransom Canyon. Because that's just a lot of like lingering shots and sadness and the same storyline repeated with 3 different romances. In this, you turn your head and you miss a performance, like a really cool performance, a funny set piece that they put in the background. Like one of them was like a shonen art piece for no reason other than I think to make you laugh, a witty comeback, passive aggressive insult. The French speak really fast and there are subtitles. So you have to pay attention. the story develops even quicker than they speak. So there's just a lot to pay attention to, and that's why I like it. How it represents theater, I think, is also respectful at the same time as a little bit more realistic than I would have expected. It's a highly competitive industry,
Right.
just like any high art form would be. But even in the intro logo, you have one foot in the I don't know what they're called, but like the little dance shoes, and then the other one's all bloodied and messed up because of how these people go through tons with their feet. Like there's blisters and there's I can't even imagine being a ballerina or a ballet. What's the dude equivalent? Is it both
I think it's
ballerinas?
both
Okay,
ballerinas.
go ahead.
Yeah, but they both, like, if you wanna talk about highly competitive, they had 1,000, like, open call for ballet dancers, and then they whittled it down
You
to
mean they had 1,000
20.
people show up?
Yeah, 1,000
Okay.
people show up, and then they whittled it down to 20.
I'm
So
surprised they
that's
didn't actually just have a dance crew like you were talking about, and they were like, "You guys are now actors."
Well, I know that, Cheyenne, this is her first English speaking role. She did, and I know that, like, she has a body double, but also she was, like, training for 9 months for the role. She stopped ballet dancing when she was 18.
Yeah, so she has to be the best ballerina in the world, so I'm sure they did their due diligence to make sure she could actually dance, but I did think, like, that we saw one performance where she was in practice, and she's, like, running around, and it's clearly energetic, but it wasn't, like, the spectacular thing that you would expect in, like, a US Olympian video, YouTube video that you would, like, click on.
That's kinda always the risk that you run when it's like that character's supposed to be the best at something. I remember with, like, Daisy Jones and the Six, they were supposed to be the best
Right.
band in the world, and I remember the first episode, the songs were good, but the best band of, like, the 1970s is pretty hard to top just in story terms.
For sure, unless you're that thing you do, in which case they did top it. So life isn't easy for these dancers. Their egos are huge. However, they're treated like baseball players or like any sport players where you can just switch them out from different they're treated like prospects. They're pumped and dumped. They have contracts where the best of the best are going to be given whatever they want, but like most of them are just going to be in like like regular I'm so comparing it to baseball and AAA and how they really need to make it to the major leagues if they want a good contract. And at the end of the day, it's a business, so there's going to be a lot of cuts.
As someone who has seen, I think I have like a little under an hour left of La Dance, but they do go through kind of the ins and outs of ballet. And one of the things that they mentioned is that people who like are starting to hit 40 or even
Oh
close
yeah,
to it, they can't do it anymore. I
right.
know that they were also talking about just like how, yeah, difficult it is because even though you're seeing a ton of training, yeah, it's almost like the theater people that are giving them comments about what they should do. They almost sound like
I remember
coaches.
watching the Olympics a few years ago. Figure skating is the exact same way. And like you max out at like 25, 26 or
Yeah.
something for that because apparently your top body
You're
gets
not gonna be
bigger.
able to do splits in the air, as one person said, at 40,
That's true, but that's more like agility wise. This is more like you bulk up differently. And so when you're dancing or when you're doing figure skating, like, and you have to do these crazy spins and stuff, your body literally it's just too big at some point.
What the
So
theater
that's why female or like women, I think, are able to do it longer than men would.
right, the theater director even said that, like, you have to have a basic understanding of gravity just when it comes to, like, the heat in your body and what you're gonna be able to do, like, you actually there's a lot of science that goes into it.
Sure. Also, I think like Baryshnikov, just to go against my own point, like danced until he was like 50 or 60. I don't know. He was like a really old, but he's like the most famous dancer dude of all time. Um, I want to highlight the direction of this show. One of the things that they did, which I know you've seen a lot of, is where the main character walks from one scene into, and you follow them into a big auditorium. And the auditorium is in the mid practice, in the middle of some like, it could be in the middle of a play, an opera production, like any sort of thing. And you're immediately like, it feels like you're actually there with them
Where you're immersed in it. I mean, like, it's so
because it
usually
feels more realistic. There's one scene where like where they cut to it and you're in the theater already and you're just like, okay, well, this is just a theater scene. There's another thing when you walk in with it and it's almost like you're put on in VR. And it feels like you've walked in with him. That's what happens with Jack when he goes in and he's seeing the play being and the orchestra playing at the same time, and he imagines Cheyenne. This is her introduction. It's really tastefully done because he's in the middle of this battle with Geneviève for who they want to trade with, and he hadn't even thought about bringing in Cheyenne until he gets into the play and he sees this Asian woman doing this crazy dance, and then they like do this kind of tone shift where they change the lighting on it, and suddenly it's Cheyenne there, but you're not supposed to know that quite yet. As an audience member, they never tell you. It's a show not tell performance, and he's just imagining this other lady doing a great job, and then he goes back to the trade room and he says, I want your best ballerina. Now he knows Cheyenne and that she's a troublemaker. She's almost as annoying to him as Crispin is, the billionaire dude. But with Cheyenne, it's more because she's just been in the industry so long. She's so cynical. She's so salty, but she's still at the top of her game. It's a little bit of a contrast to what you would think is like as people age out, like you're talking about, and they get a little bit more upset that they can't get the same roles that they used to.
Yeah.
She doesn't care that she can still dance. She hates everything.
Yeah, I mean, like, if there wasn't a single scene in that final half where she wasn't just, like, mean to everyone, even the kid that she
Right.
meets at
And
the
there's
end.
only a few, like 9 times out of 10, the line to watch you dance is like dying and finding out there is a heaven. Like you can fail at saying that or make the audience's eyes roll most of the time. But it actually, I think, worked when he said it to her. I think it came across as authentic. And there's not, again, I contribute that to the, or attribute that to the direction of the episode. What the episode doesn't do is just as important as what I think it does do. For instance, at the very beginning, you see this little girl. She's the janitor or the cleaning lady's kid, and she has the cleaning lady has recorded one of the dance classes, and so you have this little kid who has stolen that recording, and because they're not supposed to technically steal. Like it's as if I went into a college and I recorded the professor,
Right.
even though if I wasn't taking the class, that's a very expensive class to take. I'm assuming these kids who are taking this normally would have to fork up. She doesn't. She's watching it on her iPhone. She's using one of the other ballerina kids' shoes during the nighttime when no one cares. And we think that she'll show up at the end and have this like really nice moment. Like someone will take her and create, like she will become tutored to them.
Right.
She will become the next big star because she came from nothing,
Yep.
that type of thing. So Cheyenne's introduced, and we see her run into her at the end, and you're like, oh man, here it goes. They're gonna melt like the bitchy demeanor that Cheyenne has.
Right, like, meet me tomorrow at the same time or something, and she's gonna be really mean about it, but still be the teacher, yeah.
Maybe not even be mean, but like have that whole thing that we've been introduced to. Even when Crispin was talking to Cheyenne, and he was like, "You're just like me. You've destroyed people in the past. You destroyed this choreographer that you were working with, even though he was an up and comer." And you could tell she felt guilty about it, but you were like, "Well, this is her chance to make amends, right?" And in any network TV show or in a lesser TV show, they absolutely would have followed that track. You would have seen her at the end, and she would have taken this girl under her wing, and that would have been the end of the story. The rest of the series would have been about that.
Right.
Instead, she just kind of gives her a passing like comment of like, you should take this other girl's classes. She's better. And it wasn't like a full throttle, I'm going to help you out. And I was really happy with that.
Do you
And
think
so,
you could still go that way,
oh
though?
yeah, absolutely. I wasn't giving up on the idea that like this is still going to follow the most obvious trope. But she reminds me a lot of Cameron in the first season of *Halt and Catch Fire*. If you remember, that was like she was very punk. Lee Pace's character went out and found her in a college and that she was about to drop out of anyways, and just used her to code. Like she's just pure talent and rage, and that is what Cheyenne is representing. I'm not like a big fan of the ballet or opera figure skating. Like I said, I'll go on to if it's on YouTube and it's trending and it's saying like this person just broke a record. I'll click it and I'll like zoom through that video. But when it comes to things like Black Swan from 15 years ago, that was the Natalie Portman
Yeah,
film,
like
did
2010.
not care about that at all.
You
Like I
didn't
just
like
found,
Black Swan?
no, I thought it was boring. Even no, not Blackbird. What was the Birdman, right?
Yeah.
That was the Michael Keaton movie,
Right.
right? Like that was over the top to me. It's like Hollywood kind of patting itself on the back. You know, it loves making shows about shows, movies about movies, theater about theater. This threatened to be that. However, I think it's funnier. Anything you watch that's like Fincher also does that, where he kind of devolves into a love of his own stuff.
I know that, yeah, Amy, she wanted to make a lighter show for dance, and she wanted to make her own version of what a workplace comedy would be,
Yeah.
just in terms of what it would be for ballet, I guess.
And there's just, I think if you clock it, more jokes per minute than there is in something like The Office. That's how quick they speak. There's no reliance on CGI. There's no cameos yet. So they're not, again, spending money on these dumb things. I wouldn't mind if we had like one cameo maybe in the season, but it's not doing the studio thing where it's like every episode, Ron Howard, Martin Scorsese, Steve Buscemi, that type of
Or
deal.
even something like Suits LA.
Right. And lastly, like again, Luke Kirby, already a fan. So those are my pros, and there's a lot of them. Con wise, do you want me to hear the?
Well,
If you,
I want to
yeah.
hear first. What do you think the overall message of the show is?
Oh, I think it's a positive one in the end. I think it's like, remember, this still exists. There's still this really intense medium that people put their lives into just to show you. Like, I mean, they were making jokes about the Nutcracker and everything, but I don't know a kid in the US who hasn't seen that at one point or another. And like, it's an appreciation in a way, but it's not preachy.
Yeah,
So
well, I think you were more close when you said remember, because a huge reason this was made was because Amy and a ton of other dancers feel like the arts are dying, almost like Ryan Gosling says in La La Land, because especially with the not
I
to
didn't know a thing about jazz until Ryan Gosling told me about it.
I don't want to get too political, but I do have this note here. The Trump administration has continued to threaten funding to the arts, making himself chairman of the John F. Kennedy Center for Performing Arts and firing other members.
Hmm.
So therefore, it seems like and they even talked about this in the dance, which again came out in 2009. How it seems like every single year, funding for the arts and also people just going out to see it keeps on getting less and less and less.
I mean, they're making it seem like the guy, this Crispin dude, the billionaire, is just he's a fan. Like he doesn't care about anything. He if he could make this a private industry, he would. But he honestly just likes full crowds,
Right.
and so he does want to kind of like George Steinbrenner it. He's like the leader of BP Oil or something like that, coming in and being like, "I want to save the arts." So it is funny the contrast that they presented
But
there.
yeah, so you go ahead and do your cons.
Everyone, all the characters, all of them, unapologetically eccentric, but also like the only one I would say is maybe insane is Cheyenne. But not insane enough to keep the plot from like moving forward. It's theatrical, it's flamboyant, and the acting, if that's not your cup of tea, if you don't like flamboyant characters being snarky, you're going to hate the show and don't watch it. That's just a fair warning. There are also some scenes that I wasn't as crazy about. The Cheyenne boat scene where she was introduced after her like imaginary introduction,
Yeah.
which I call tasteful. That side story felt too Wes Anderson magical realism to me. She was throwing people off the boat like because she's this eco warrior
And not caring.
yeah, and so I thought it was part of a movie production that she was in and that they were going to zoom or like franchise it out, show that she had been like working in Paris on a movie and was pulled away from that project. No, instead this boat thing is real and her boatmates called the cops on her because they're so sick of dealing with her. And it's at that point like presented like a Wes Anderson comedy where like all the eco warriors run into the boat because they're so shy from her. And
Yeah,
like
right.
so that I wasn't particularly thrilled by because it did take away a little bit of the realism. And then Kristen's storyline with I keep on calling him Kristen or Crispin. I forget what his real name is, but the bad guy when he's talking to her and he gives the speech, "You're just like me." I'm not exactly sure how that was supposed to be taken because again, she's the best ballerina in the world and he has brought her to New York kind of and just to like kind of be like you're an asshole too. Like I don't
But
see the
doesn't he explain? Yeah, because he says you're just like me, and then he talks about how like they both are short tempered and both of them
right.
play by their own
And I
rules.
guess if he's trying to be like, stop giving me crap because you're just like me, but this is the talent that you just brought over, would he not be looking to mend some sort of bridge? Or maybe that's just his way of doing it.
I think I need to push back on it because at the very beginning of that scene,
Right.
you see him and he's trying to be nice to her. She's the one that's kind of like, let's not act like we're friends here.
Right. Don't act like you're friends, but don't then turn around and say, you are a sleazeball. You should feel guilty about what you did to this guy so many years ago. And like, I don't know. That scene, it wasn't that it didn't accomplish anything. It was more just I wasn't as thrilled with it as I had been the other scenes, which were funnier to me. And then Jack, I think, is going to temper her craziness or at least her anger. And so that'll be a really good grip between the two of them. But my final rating for this, because that is the end of my cons, is that it was a terrific episode. The swap, impressive, unexpected, fast paced, funny, acrobatic, engaging cast. It's a well known story because nothing new about the story, but it's a unique industry that it's taking part in. And much of the greatness comes from realizing how much Amazon actually decided to put into it. I mean, they could have just given it a shoestring budget. Instead, they decided to fork up.
But I think the talent behind the camera, especially with Marvelous Mrs. Maisel and how good that was for Amazon, I think that automatically, because like I said, they gave it a 2-season order. So they, I think, were putting a lot of faith into this.
Absolutely. I just want to point out, like, there's a lot of these 2-season orders that they give the same thing to Lord of the Rings. They probably gave the same thing to Fallout. And they did that because it was well-known IP. They knew that they were trying to get to a younger audience. I'm not exactly sure if they could have pitched and said, okay, we're definitely going to get a lot of ballet enthusiasts in this, because I don't know if there are a lot of ballet enthusiasts out there. But I'm saying, if you have any interest whatsoever, not even in the ballet, but just like the performance aspect of people, like Broadway, any of that stuff, you're probably going to find some fun in this show. Identify with its sense of humor. I'm rounding up from like an 8.5 and actually giving it a 9 out of 10 for the first episode.
And I know that it also switches between French and English.
Yeah.
Basically, it's bilingual.
But the
almost.
French part is the harder part, because, like, again, they speak at a clip. I speak fast. They speak even faster. And I do like that Cheyenne, like, it's her first English role, you said, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, they're not having someone dub her. She has a very thick French accent. And
She said it was really, it's funny how you talk so much about the French speaking fast, because she said one of the hardest parts about learning English is how fast people speak in English, and she had to kind of meet that same kind of cadence and pace.
Yeah.
The show overall has an 85% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's got good reviews, 74% audience score, 7.1 on IMDb. RogerEbert.com said it was guaranteed to be your spring TV obsession. They praised the writing, calling it whip smart, and at times it felt like an Aaron Sorkin and Jesse Armstrong mix.
Yeah. So when I said The Newsroom, that was an apt comparison.
Are you gonna watch the rest of it? Because all 8 episodes are out now.
Right. So yeah, probably. I'm not gonna binge it. There's just so much on the tap. We have another French show that's coming out pretty soon, Kareem.
Also on Amazon, right?
Also, like, going into an industry that you don't usually see, like, period real shows about. Like, you'll see a lot of reality cooking shows. You'll see maybe The Bear, as far as seeing chefs and having sort of that weird mix of comedy and drama. But seeing the first, like, big French chef during the time of the French Revolution, and I'm reading the book right now, and it's really intense what his life was like. They even talk about the first food critic, because restaurants weren't the same as they are now at that point.
We'll save it for.
I'm just saying, there's a lot of stuff to talk about, whether you're talking about ballet or cooking. All right. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
Bye.